Have you ever stopped to think that hunger can be a spiritual weapon? That being without eating for a while, when done on purpose, can it bring mental clarity, self-control, even physical healing? It seems strange in a world that runs after immediate pleasure. But Ellen G. White wrote deep and almost forgotten things about fasting, and what she said can completely change the way you see your health and your spiritual life. There are people who think fasting is a thing of the past. Others think it is just a radical practice of those who want to force God to answer. But what if I told you that the true fast, the way Ellen White described, has nothing to do with self-pity or fanaticism? It has to do with balance, purification of body and mind, and even preparation for final events. Have you ever felt you need a restart? Something that aligns you with the sky and detoxifies your heart? Then hold this conversation. Ellen White did not see fasting as an end in himself, but as a powerful means of communion with God. In The Science of Good Living, she speaks of the intimate relationship between what we eat and our spiritual discernment. When the body is overwhelmed by excesses, the mind gets blocked, the emotions deregulate, and the connection with God weakens. Fasting enters this scenario like a holy break, not just a running out of food, but a conscious delivery, a time where the body rests, the blood cleans itself, the mind brightens, and the voice of God becomes clearer. In his writings, Ellen White also associates fasting with decisive moments of life. Before great decisions, she recommends periods of fasting and prayer, not for superstition, but because fasting silences distractions and strengthens the will. She mentions that even the Salvador fasted before starting his ministry. Does it tell you something? How to expect to face the end-time proofs if we don't even train our mind and body to hear the voice of God clearly? Ellen says that many fail in spiritual battle because they live overloaded by their own habits, and fasting is a way of breaking this cycle. Now, think to me, why do themes like fasting hardly appear in today's preaching? Is it because he directly confronts the modern lifestyle? Ellen White was very clear. Intimates, excessive food, drink, stimuli is one of the biggest causes of humanity's spiritual and physical weakness. In the book, Advice on the Food Regime, she states that many die because they sacrifice life on the altar of appetite. Strong, right? But true. And it calls us for urgent reflection. Are we getting sick spiritually because we lose control over something as basic as food? Fasting, according to her writings, is an antidote. It is a renovation tool, and reform begins in the heart. It is not just about changing the menu, but of rediscovering the balance between body and spirit. The very concept of purification goes beyond symbolic language. Ellen White talks about real cleaning, blood cleansing, organs, mind. It describes how fasting can alleviate the digestive system, allow the body to heal from inflammation, and even restore mental functions impaired by excess stimulus. In other words, fasting is not a punishment. It is an act of care with ourselves and with the presence of God in us. And when she talks about health, it's not just physical. Ellen White deals with the human being as a whole, physical, mental, and spiritual. She writes that careful fasting, united with fervent prayer, brightens the mind and makes it easier to distinguish right from wrong. This has practical implications. Do you know that difficult decision moment? That prayer where God looks silent. The mind dull by bad habits may be the obstacle. Fasting opens space. Turn the noise off. Take the soul of the automatic. It helps us remember who is in control and who should be. But it also makes an important warning. Fasting should not be done recklessly. It is not to be an extreme penance. In Testimonies to the Church, she explains that fasting for long periods is neither necessary nor safe, and that there must be common sense. Each body is different. Each circumstance is unique. The purpose of fasting, according to her, is spirituality, clarity, and not physical suffering or emotional wear. Balance is the central principle. It even recommends in certain cases partial fasts. For example, reducing the amount of meals or simplifying food to the maximum for a given period. Now, think of the current scenario: rush, stress, fast food, excess information, anxiety, insomnia. We live in a time of constant stimulus, and the body feels, the mind suffers, the soul screams. In this context, fasting can be a kind of divine pause button, a chance to reconfigure our pace. Ellen White connects this with the preparation for the time of the end. Yes, she takes the conversation to this point. According to her, those who do not learn today to dominate the appetite will not resist the pressure that will come. Appetite control was Christ's first temptation in the desert, and it will be one of the last evidence for God's people. It's much more serious than it seems. Fasting is then an essay for faithfulness. It is a school of self-control, and Ellen White insists on it. She doesn't see the appetite as a detail. She sees as a spiritual question because the appetite is linked at ease, and the will is the thirst of the decision. Those who lose their own rule because of food loses the dominion of their own life. And this resonates in each area, in relationships, in financial decisions, in the way of dealing with pain, sin, temptation. Fasting reveals who is in charge. And now comes the most delicate part. Fasting also has the power to restore spiritual sensitivity. Ellen White comments that many Christians are so dull by the indulgences of the flesh that they cannot hear the voice of the Spirit. Strong that, but we feel right. Sometimes we pray, and it seems that nothing happens. We read the Bible, and it does not speak. Let's go to the church, and we go out equal. Perhaps the problem is not heaven. Maybe we are. Perhaps our mind is so full of distractions, sugar, anxiety, that the voice of God is muffled. Fasting is a Philivin way to recalibrate this frequency. Therefore, she encourages fasting periods before making important decisions, before starting new projects, and especially before great spiritual battles. Because at these times, more than physical strength, what we need is discernment. And discernment comes clearly, and clarity comes with silence. The silence of the food, the silence of the body, the silence of the soul. And in this silence, God speaks, and speaks loudly. Now I want to ask you a sincere question. When was the last time you stopped everything, all to seek God's presence in depth? Have you tried fasting, not to ask for something, but to hear better, not to prove holiness, but to seek humility? Tell me in the comments, what do you think about fasting? Have you ever practiced? Have you ever felt your effects? Let's talk about it. Share your experience. Someone may need to read exactly what you will write. And if this content spoke to you, share it with someone who needs this awakening. Fasting is not just an old practice. It is a spiritual key, a transformation tool, a divine remedy for an intoxicated world. Ellen White showed us that health and salvation walk together, that care for the body is also an act of worship, and that dominating appetite is a step of preparation for eternity. Thank you so much for staying here. May this message bear fruit in your life, fruits of balance, clarity, and a stronger connection with the sky. And remember, God speaks, but sometimes we need to silence the body to listen to the soul.